What's up, guys? It's Friday. I badly need a haircut. That means it's time to code. Gonna be doing another P5 image processing project here today. Taking inspiration from this piece by Hammy Art on Instagram. Give them a follow. So let's jump right into it. We're gonna make a tool that lets us define like a grid on a lets us select like a grid in a sorry it's going to let us select a grid in a photo or an image and scramble the grid. Okay, I mean, it speaks for itself. All right, let's get started. I'm going to make a class. Let's call it Grid Scrambler. So to start off, we're going to have a variable called grid height. And to start off, we'll just make it like height over 3, just so we don't have a grid height that's too tall for the canvas. This dot grid width. Ooh. You're gonna have to bear with me. It's Friday. I'm a little bit checked out. Width over 3. Alright, then we're going to need a number of rows. Start num rows equals 3. Start num calls equals 3. Okay, so we're gonna need a X and Y for the center. The center of our tool. And I think that's it for now. So we're gonna need a show function to see where our tool is. And we're going to so we want to make sure, I know I haven't done this in previous videos, but we want to use anytime we're like changing global settings in P5, we want to use push and pop so that we can change the settings, and then we call push before we change the settings. We do whatever with the settings we want, and then we push pop and the settings go back to the way they were. So especially if we're working with a function that changes values, we want to call push and pop so that we're not calling a function, changing our global values, and forgetting about it, you know. So push pop. We want to make sure we do that. And we're going to set the rect mode to draw from the center. Then what we're gonna do is just draw our rectangle. This dot X, this dot Y, this dot. So this will draw the outside of our tool, the border. This dot grid. And let's just call this height. Why do we need it to be grid height? and that should be the width anyway. This dot height. Okay, so that gives us our rectangle, our border for our tool. Then we're going to need lines. So we will for let I equals 0 to num rows. This dot, you can't forget this dot. And for so we can actually do this in two unnested for loops. One for the rows and one for the columns. So to draw the row lines, we're going to find where we need to draw each line. So this is going to be x minus this dot width over 2 and then the height is going to be, or the y is going to be I times so let's see, so we're going to draw a line. So we need the point over here, the point over here. So the left point of each line is going to be this dot x minus this dot width over 2. The y is going to be this dot y minus this dot height. So this is going to be a little bit trickier. This is going to be this dot y minus this dot height divided by num rows, this dot num rows. And this is going to be floored. No, it doesn't need to be floored. But this is going to have to be, so this is actually going to be this dot y minus this dot height divided by this dot num rows. So this is all going to be divided by 2. Okay, and this is all going to be times I. Right? You know, this is actually going to be a lot easier if we... Okay, so we get the top. First we get the top of the box. That's this dot y minus this dot width over 2. Okay. Let's actually make these variables. So const top equals and then when we draw the columns, we're going to start on the left side, and that's going to be this dot x minus this dot, oh my god, this dot width over 2, and I just realized this should be height. Alright, and then we can just use left for this. Top plus I times this dot height over this dot num rows. There we go. So then to get the right, so this is just going to be all this again, except it's going to be left plus this dot width. Okay. Do we need another? Yes, we do. All right. Then we will draw the columns. Same thing. Except this will be top, this will be top plus this dot height, this will be left plus this dot width divided by this dot num columns. All right. So let's make sure this is working. I think we can make that. No. I think we gotta use let grid scrambler GS. Let's make our canvas bigger. GS equals grid new grid scrambler. GS dot show. We're missing a column. Oh, because we're not. Which that kind of doesn't make sense to me because we have the same number of rows and columns to start. And we're going to make sure to use a stroke that is white, and we're going to not fill it. Why is that not showing up? I know why. Because this should be I times that. Knew I was forgetting something. There we go. Okay, now we're going to need an update function. And for now, we're going to make sure that when we move our cursor around that it follows. So we'll say this dot x equals mouse x dot y equals mouse y. And we're going to update every frame before we show. And there we go. We want to be able to resize our box. So let's say if key pressed, what is it? Is it key pressed? Is it key is pressed? I always forget. Key is pressed. And of course it's all one word, key is pressed. And I think I will use a switch statement. Switch key. Alright, so I've added, I've used the WASD keys to allow us to resize the box. What I'm actually going to do is make two functions, one to add, remove, actually I'm going to make four functions, sorry, to add and remove rows and columns. I'm doing this because I realized if we add rows and columns this way, then like if you barely tap the key, then it'll add like a bunch of columns, and we don't want that. We want every one time you touch the key, it adds one row, one column. You get it. Alright, so we've got our four functions now. What we're going to do is we're going to write this KeyPressed function. And so what this function does, this function is called once every time a key is pressed. So once when the key is pressed, and then if the key is held down, it's still only called when the key is pressed down. So that's exactly what we want. We don't want to be able to hold down the key and add a bunch of rows and columns. So when key is pressed, we're going to add a switch statement. We're going to do it just like this other one. Alright, so now we see this is working like we want. So we have we have the foundation of our tool, so now we need to make it functional. We will make a method called scramble. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do in this scramble function is we're going to iterate over our grid. We're going to get the XY coordinates of each of the top left corner of each of the boxes in our grid. So for all the rows and columns, we're going to get the top left corner of that box, which is going to be we're going to want those left and right. There we go. Or the top and left constants again. we've got those. Okay, so we're going, so let's also make constants, call them, I don't know, delta x, and this is just going to be the width, or this dot width, make sure we're using the right width, divided by this dot num rows. So this is just for each column, how far to move in the x direction. And similarly, delta y, this is going to be this dot height. Actually, so this is going to be num columns. Sorry, got that backwards. And then this is going to be this dot height over this dot num rows. Okay. So we got our top left, delta x, delta y. So then we're going to push the coordinates of the top left corner, which is going to be I times, actually it's going to be, so the x coordinate is going to be left plus left plus j times delta x, and the y coordinate is going to be top plus I times delta y. Okay, so we've got our corners. Then what we want to do is we're actually going to have another array, call it shuffled. We'll just leave it uninitialized till after we get corners. Then what we're going to do is make shuffled equal shuffle corners, and we'll pass in true. This will modify, no, we don't want to pass in true. I lied. In fact, no, I think it's false by default. So this second parameter to shuffle is a Boolean indicating whether you want to modify the array that you pass in or just pass back a copy of it. So we just want shuffled to be a copy of shuffled corners. So then what we're going to do, we're going to swap all this. So we're going to do this all again. Iterate over the rows and columns. But instead what we're going to do is so let's go ahead and get an image in here first. We'll say let image, we'll get it in the preload function. Load image, image.jpg. Now let's get a photo to work with. Alright, so I've uploaded a photo of my brother's cat and named it image.jpg. make sure it's just, gotta make sure the extension, whatever, doesn't matter. We'll just change this. Is there a difference? Someone tell me in the comments, is there a difference between JPEG with an E and without an E? I really want to know. Okay. So we're going to draw our image. Every frame, 0, 0, image dot width, image dot height. And we're going to do some initialization before. So we're going to make our image, so we're going to resize our image. It's going to be, this image is, I think it's taller than it is wide. So the cool thing about the resize function is if you want it to keep its ratio, its resolution, then you can pass in 0 for the parameter, the independent, it would be the dependent parameter. Pass in 0 for the parameter you don't want to control, and then pass in a value for the parameter that you do want to control. So I'm going to say we want the width of this to be 800 and just set the, or no, we want the height to be 800. Set the width to whatever to keep the resolution the same. Then we're going to make the canvas the same size as the image. Okay. And now let's see what happens. We don't, there it is. There he is. Okay, so we got a picture of Carl. So on my other image manipulation videos, we worked pixel by pixel, which is cool to know how to do, but there's a simpler way if you're just swapping, like if you're just moving around certain sections of an image. There's this handy function we can use called image.copy. We're going to copy the corner, the original corner, into this temp variable image. Then we're going to copy the part of the image from the shuffled array into that original box. Makes sense? And then we're going to place what was in the temp image into where the shuffled image was. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know why I was iterating over I and J there. We don't need to do that. We have a one-dimensional shuffled array. So for each of those, we're going to make a temp image. Let temp equal image dot, or create image, create image just takes in a width and a height. So we're going to make a blank image with the same width and height as our source image. Then what we're going to do is call temp.copy image. So we need to specify a copy. Source image. So we'll pass in, so we pass in image as the source image. We pass in a X and a Y for the top corner of the source image to get from a width and a height to get from the source. And then we pass in similarly X and Y of the, oh, okay, so our temp image actually is not going to be the same size as our image. We just want our temp image to be the size of one of these boxes, which is delta X by delta Y. Okay, then temp is going to be temp.copy from the image. What are you doing? We're going to, so the source X and Y are going to be corners 0 and 1. It's going to be X. Corner 0 is X, corners 1 is Y, and delta X is the width, delta Y is the height. Then in our destination, it's just going to be 0, 0, and these again. Move you over there a little bit, Carl. Stop. There we go. Okay. So now we've got our copy of our image. Then what we're going to do is call image.copy. We're going to move the box from shuffled to the boxed from corner, the original box. So we're going to call this again, except we don't need to pass in a source image, because if we don't pass one in, it assumes that we're copying to the same image, which is what we're doing. So the source here though is going to be shuffled 0, shuffled I0. Okay, so this should be corners I0. My mistake. Similarly, this is shuffled I0, shuffled delta X, delta Y. Then this is going to be this here. Okay. So we move that into that, and then what we need to do, finally, oops, is place the so we're going to call image.copy, and this time source is going to be temp. The source X and Y are 0, 0, and of course delta X, delta Y are our width and height. And we're going to put this in shuffled. Okay, so hopefully that should work. Do we need to call pixels.update or anything? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So what we're gonna do is use this mouse clicked function. Or is it mouse pressed? I don't remember. Mouse pressed. And when we do this, what are we gonna, so when the mouse is pressed, we're going to call gs.scramble. All right, guys, I think, and it didn't work. Create image was expecting string for parameter 0. Might help if I call the right function. Yeah. Look at that. Sorry, Carl, I'm mangling you. What is this error I'm getting? Copy is expecting integer. Yeah. This is fun. All right, guys, that's all I got for this one. Hope you had fun as always. As I've said in my last video, I started a GitHub. Link is going to be in the description if you want to check that out. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.